Pac Man is one of the most influential gaming characters, yet whenever he is brought up, the only game that comes to most people's minds is his original arcade game. If I mentioned Mario, for example, you're gonna think of thousands of installments. Pac Man, on the other hand, not so much. Typically, we get new spins on the formula of the original, however, most original stuff, we try purging that from our memory. Don't get me wrong, some of the arcade spin-offs are great, but it all feels a little samey. Pac-Man's always felt tied to his debut to an extent. If it wasn't just the classic maze gameplay with dots and ghosts and etc., then it wasn't a new Pac-Man game. And every time he tries doing something new, it's not really remembered a whole lot. But there was an exception. 3 games that are still brought up to a relatively prevalent extent, and that would be the Pac Man World trilogy. Pac Man World is usually regarded as a true jump to home console, at least the first hard-hitting one. There was a Pac Man 2, but some call me Johnny didn't like it, so therefore it was bad. Pac in Time looks interesting, but the game actually pulled a Super Mario Bros. 2, and it's actually a reskin of, get this, Fury of the Furries. Namco had to turn the heat to an 11 if they wanted their pizza-shaped friend in the big leagues. Enter the PlayStation 1, where a new project would begin development known as Pac Man Ghost Zone. The story would follow a child playing the arcade game, but getting sucked up and becoming the man himself. While it was apparently similar to Super Mario 64, it housed tank controls, which as we know should never be in a 3D platformer. Namco was very unhappy with the supposedly low-quality project, so eventually Ghost Zone would just be scrapped altogether. However, it eventually evolved into Pac Man World. It would take on the surname 20th Anniversary. In the States and Japan, it released in late 1999, so it was only a little early. Europe actually got it right. The final game would be a much more linear experience than intended, however, it still contains exploration elements. Developers of the game would go on and say it replicated the flavor and feeling of the arcade game, and that was reflected with the reviews. 7s, 8s, even 9s were handed to this game like they were going out of style. With praise from across the board and the cult following to boot, this game surely had to be great. But when I got to play it myself, I felt a little mixed. At the end of the day, I would say I liked this game, but there were times where it felt like a frustrating, unpolished experience. But what made it that way? Well, let's read the back of the case and maybe we might find out. Pac-Man is back. Please stop. The plot centers Pac-Man's birthday, fitting the specific emphasis of the 20th anniversary surname. His friends and family all set up a surprise birthday party at his house, however, one by one, Chomp Chomp, Baby Pac, Puka, Pac Jr., Professor Pac, and Miss Pac-Man all get kidnapped. Wait a minute, is this sounding familiar to anyone? Pac-Man arrives only to find his house decimated. Eventually he finds out that there is an imposter of him at Ghost Island who is setting up a meet and greet. The formidable Toc-Man is introduced, and he is easily one of my favorite parts of the game. His design is metallic and twisted, which makes his presence all the more intimidating. He learns that the ghosts failed to capture Pac-Man and is now loose on the island, so he demands that they find him instantly. Alright, enough fucking around, let's just get to the gameplay. The first level tells you everything you need to know about the next 6 to 8 hours of this game. Pac-Man can run, jump, as you probably could have predicted. Full mid-air control too, which is super nice. He has 3 moves equipped with him: the butt bounce for additional height and sometimes destruction, the rev roll to gain temporary speed, and the pellet throw, which, yeah, each move is necessary to traverse the levels besides the last one. Pac-Man can sustain 3 hits. 4 and you die. Sometimes there is swimming, which usually means that there is a steel ball nearby. It turns you into a metal version of yourself and also allows you to walk underwater. I'm surprised Nintendo didn't send a cease and desist. You'll find pellets scattered throughout the adventure, and sometimes they're even accompanied by ghosts. That also means a power pill will be nearby, but I don't think you need an explanation of what happens when you eat one. Rarely you'll find a specific trail with an arrow at the end of the first pellet, which automatically sends you through the said trail. Wait a minute, is this sounding familiar to anyone? Fruits are also very common in every world. Not only will eating them net you points, but also access through certain doors, because video game. The doors house all sorts of goodies, such as 1-ups, hit points, or Pac-Man letters, all of which you can find elsewhere too. I'm surprised Nintendo didn't send a cease and desist. Galaxians will allow you to enter special doors containing a maze, but we'll get to those later. Collecting all 6 letters will allow you to go through a special bonus level, which are definitely super fun. All of these collectibles add to your total score, which also gain you 1-ups, which you're gonna need a lot of later on. The score and collectibles are great additions, which add a whole new layer of catharsis to this game, almost like an actual arcade game. Now, the levels themselves are where the game gets a little shaky. It seems that for every good one, there is a horrible one. For every well thought out mechanic, there is also a bullshit one. There is zero camera control in this game, which might sound fine at first, but believe me, depth perception is at times uncomputable. What's worse is that levels are filled with bottomless pits, which is an automatic death. Sometimes when you don't see what's ahead of you, an enemy will just strike out of nowhere. Some specific mechanics are also terrible, like these spike contraptions in the Ruins world. Certain levels can also take up to 20 minutes long if you don't know what you're doing, which can be agonizing at times. Eventually you notice a formula. Go through a level, pass a door, go through an obstacle, find a fruit, backtrack to the door, rinse and repeat. The whole process can get really repetitive and makes the game feel like a slog at points. The final levels of each world also has one of Pac-Man's friends trapped inside a cage. A key should be somewhere in the level, but on occasion it'll be in the previous one. If you didn't know this, that means you have to replay the last 2 levels again, and that is just not fun. If I wanted to rank all the worlds, it would go like this. The Ruins. It is the second world in the game and also has an unnatural spike in difficulty. While it only has 2 levels compared to the status quo of 3, the last level is long enough to make up for it. Factory isn't very remarkable, but it isn't that bad. The final level is again a lengthy hellhole of confusing level design. Funhouse kind of looks like Clown Vomit, but honestly I'm kind of all for that. The platforming challenges here are pretty fun at times, but that last level again, man, come on, can they not be any longer? Pirate is easy and cozy, and I would say it helps you get used to the rest of the game, but again, that difficulty spike. Mansion is really cool. Being the final world in the game, it feels challenging enough to be formidable, but nothing is awful besides these clouds you need for platforming. That's more of a problem with the game itself, but it is really hard to judge where they can be at times. My favorite world would be the space world, which has balanced challenges mixed with a fantastic aesthetic. Also, the music here kicks ass. Anyway, the previously mentioned mazes, which you can only access by collecting a Galaxian, are not great. At the bottom of the maze specifically, the camera is angled in a certain way where you can't see what's ahead of you. Mix that with stop and go elements, which the ghosts can just bypass, and you have something I would rather skip than return to. Now, every world ends with a boss battle. The first is an easy pirate ship with eyes. Simply deflect the cannonballs enough times and you win. The Ruins conclude with Anubis Rex.
We are saving this one for later.
I really liked Space World's boss, that being King Galaxian. The whole boss is pretty difficult, but is an awesome homage to Galaxian, or Galaga, whatever you want to call it. P.S. You can fire double the shots by spamming X and circle, which makes the boss way easier. Carnival finishes with a race against clowns. Either you off them or finish first and you win. It's a little clunky, but it's not too hard. Now, Chrome Keeper from Factory is as fun as he is challenging. Not really. Hit these 4 buttons using Metal Pac-Man while also avoiding these magnets on top. When all the buttons are pressed, only one remains in the middle. Make it there as fast as you can, otherwise the buttons will reset. The problem here isn't challenge, it's repetition. No new variables are ever introduced, meaning it quickly gets tedious. Wouldn't be a problem if his health wasn't so damn high. Not a very good penultimate boss. But finally, Toc-Man is the final boss overall, and he's pretty great. He'll use the same exact moves that Pac-Man has used against you, but that's when you get the chance to show them how the real Pac-Man does it. Sometimes he's hard to telegraph, which makes it more difficult. After defeating him, a depressed little ghost named Orson starts crying at Pac-Man's feet, complaining about how no one loves a ghost. You'd expect an ending here where Pac-Man forgives Orson and he begins a redemption arc, but fuck no. Pac-Man just eats the goddamn guy. Like, holy shit. Alright, so with the bosses out of the way, I think I'm missing something. Oh yeah, in the main menu you can actually play the original Pac-Man game. It's a wonderful addition and is especially appreciated in this game. You don't have to unlock it or anything, it's just right there from the get-go. Other than that... forgetting something. Oh yeah, you remember those outtakes during the credits of the classic Pixar movies? Well, this game offers those too. Stuff like this makes me smile like an idiot. It's really charming. I think that's it for the... I think that... Okay, fine, I'll talk about him. Fine, I'll talk about him. I'll talk about the undisputed worst part of the game. It's time to talk about... This boss is an atrocity. The second boss in the game out of 6, and he's the most difficult part of it all. Difficult not in a balanced and fair way, like you learn the mechanics in a way. No, it's deranged! Phase 1 begins with a mummy chase. Surrounding you are spikes that will pop up if you become too close. These are hard to avoid, and Pac-Man's hitbox will assure that you'll hit every last one. Also, nobody else seems to talk about this, but he has the most obnoxious snoring sound imaginable during this part. But hey, it's over quickly though, which I am glad about. But what I am not glad about is the second goddamn phase. Basically, rev-roll on these 4 platforms quick enough, then hit him in the weak point. Rinse and repeat 3 more times. Easy, right? Each time you get hit, a new variable appears. Second is this tornado, which you must jump over at the right time. Which, okay, you know what? Fine. Sometimes you get a little unlucky and you have to get hit no matter what. But, okay. Fine. Yeah, try fucking meteors hitting the rev pads whenever they want to. But at least that's over with. At least I don't. Nope. There are lasers. There are lasers now. What the? By the way, rev roll on a pad incorrectly. Well then, guess what? Instant death. No amount of description can even begin to scratch the surface of how terribly designed this boss is. Well, this game is certainly a mixed bag. However, I think one of the aspects that propels the experience is the presentation. It has such a cozy PS1 era flair to it. The music in this game is really awesome too. My favorite track is the King Galaxian boss, but there's also Buccaneer Beach, Fallout, the main theme of the damn game, and Ghostly Garden, just to name a few. The vast majority of them use leitmotifs from previous entries in the Pac Man series, or previous Namco games in general. The sound effects Pac Man makes are also pulled from the original arcade game, which makes it feel like a proper evolution of that game. All in all, this game just oozes charm because of those ingredients combined, and I think that's why a lot of people remember this game so fondly. Well, you know what? I liked Pac Man World, and it definitely does have its enjoyable moments, but make no mistake, it's nowhere near perfect. When compared to the rest of the PlayStation 1 catalog, I think it's one of the sleeper hits, but that doesn't change it from being a solid experience. It didn't push the limits of the console or shatter expectations, but it didn't really need to either. At the end of the day, it's a worthy addition to add to your collection, and is one I'll probably come back to someday. Kind of like later on when the remake comes out. I'll give my 2 cents on that when it comes out, trust me on this one. But otherwise, we still have 2 sequels to check out. Pac Man World 2 is highly regarded amongst the fanbase, but Pac Man World 3 is much more divisive. But as for the remake, I'm certainly excited, and I'm pretty sure it's going to be a great experience. However, one problem, you didn't remove Anubis Rex, but you replaced Miss Pac-Man with his mom. All because that good-for-nothing shitty Sega Genesis cloning garbage-ass company At Games decided, oh, all of a sudden we have the rights to this woman. Well, guess what, At Games? Give Pac-Man his wife back!